Alright, the fifth deck I'm going to show you guys is the oldest deck I have. I actually created this way back when I was in high school, and it has not changed since. So all the cards I have here are basically from a really old set, and I haven't added any new cards yet. As you can see, none of these cards are modern. They're all old cards. But yeah, I still like this deck because it's very, very effective, and I never had to add any new cards to it because it's so effective. So anyways, this card is called my Threshold deck because it's based on a mechanic from the Odyssey set called Threshold. So I'm going to show you guys a lot of the cards here. It is a green-blue deck, 60 cards, you know. I played this a lot back when I was in high school against my friends, and it did pretty well. And what's amazing about it is this deck's also very cheap to play. There's almost no rares in this deck at all. It's full of commons and uncommons. So it's very easy to build, very cheap to build. All uses just old cards and stuff. So anyways, Wild Mongrel, okay. The mechanic of this deck is Threshold, which means that you have to have more than 7 or more cards in your graveyard for Threshold effects to activate. So this card is 2 mana for 2/2. Discard a card to make it get +1/+1, become the color of my choice. Doesn't sound very great, but the fact that you can discard more cards and play madness cards and you know, make your graveyard pool grow bigger and make threshold effects activate more easily. So this is a very good card in this deck. It makes all that happen. Wonder is an example of a card you would discard with this card. This card, as long as it's in your graveyard and you control an island, creatures you control are flying. So say I have this card in my hand, I discard it, goes in my graveyard. Now all my creatures are flying. And the only way to get rid of it is to exile this card from my graveyard, which is very hard to do for a lot of decks. So yeah, it's a very good combination. You discard this card, he has flying, and he gets +1/+1. It becomes the color of your choice. This is the same thing to activate these mechanics, these discarding mechanics. Draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards for 1 mana. That's very efficient for this deck. Genesis, if it's in my graveyard, then I can pay 3 mana to return a creature from my graveyard to my hand. You know, so yeah, you can discard this and then you can get back your creatures every turn, you know, which is awesome. Frantic Search is basically Careful Study, but it's a free thing. Like, you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, then you untap up to 3 lands. So it's 3 mana, it's more initial investment, but it's basically free when you play it, so that makes it awesome. Circular Logic is a madness card. So you can play this card for this madness cost, when you discard it from your hand. So if I have a Mongol here, the opponent plays something, I'll just discard this, pay just 1 mana and counter that spell, unless the controller pays 1 mana for each card in my graveyard, which should be a lot, because this deck focuses on putting cards in the graveyard. Basking Rootwalla is a pretty good card by itself. I mean, it's not really great. But it's not bad either. It's just a 0. It's a 1 mana 1/1. 2 mana gets +2/+2. But the incredible thing about this one is that its madness cost is 0. So that means that if I have a Wild Mongrel, I can discard this one and it goes into play for free. So, and I almost always just play it that way. Just the madness cost of 0 means that it's a free card. Like, it's 0 mana for 1/1 that has this ability, which is awesome. Nimble Mongoose, 1 mana for 1/1, has Shroud. Threshold, this is the Threshold mechanic here. As long as you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, your Threshold, then this is basically a 3/3 Shroud for 1 mana, which is amazing. You know, that's amazing value. Even by today's standards, you know, this is an old card, but even by today's standards, that's pretty good. 1 mana for 3/3 Shroud. War of the Worm. Now, usually in this deck, you almost never pay 7 mana to put a 6/6. That's not a very good investment, but you play the flashback cost for 4 mana. And 4 mana for a 6/6 is actually a really good deal, right? And you play flashback mechanic means you play this from your graveyard. So you discard this and then you pay 4 mana for 6/6 is usually how this works. War of the Worm. And Werebearer. 2 mana for 1/1. Not very good, but he adds mana to your pool, plus he becomes a 4/4 if you have Threshold. So yeah, 2 mana for 4/4 adds mana. So that becomes very good. Accumulated Knowledge is 2 mana Okay, so what happens is you draw a card, then you draw a card equal to the amount of accumulated knowledge in your graveyard. So if you play this first time, you draw a card for 2 mana, which is not very good. Second time, you play this 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and then it becomes very good. The third time, 2 mana, draw 3 cards, 2 mana, draw 4 cards. That becomes really awesome value after the first time. As long as you know it's in your graveyard. Or you can discard these cards, you know, it's in your graveyard, then you pay 2 mana and then draw more the first time, which is what this deck's all about, putting cards in the graveyard. Yeah, all these, basically I have a lot of 4 of cards here, so I don't think I have many. Yeah, I don't think I have many like one. Oh, here's one, Rune Snag. Similar to Accumulated Knowledge, what I said is you counter target spell unless you pay 2 plus an additional 2 mana for each card, Rune Snag in your graveyard. So you can discard this, pay 2 mana, and then it's better than a mana leak, right? They had to pay 4 and then 6 and then 8, which they probably won't not be able to do. It's Rune Snag. I think I have one more card like this. Oh, here's another Yavimar Hollow. You regenerate a creature for 1 mana. Yes, I think there's one more card like this. It's Ether Burst. Here it is. All the Ether Bursts are here at the freaking bottom of the deck. What's going on? Oh, it's sticky for some reason. I haven't played this in a while. Okay. Yeah, I've not played this deck in a long time. This is just like there as a time capsule almost. Since like 9th grade. Okay, 2 mana, return X creatures to their owner's hands, where X is 1 plus the number of Ether Burst in all graves. So this is very similar to Rune Snag and Accumulated Knowledge. You play this the first time, you return 1, second time you return 2, third time you put in 3. You know, once you discard this and you play this, then it compounds the effect, you know. So it's like a super unsummon in that sense. So yeah, that's it. That's a very simple deck, special deck, very cheap to make, very easy to make, all commons and uncommons. There's only one rare Genesis, and it's not even like required. This is the only rare in this deck, and it's like not even a required card. So you can like make this deck with just commons and uncommons, which is very cool, and still very it's very effective. I can say it's a very effective deck, aggro deck. That's it. Yes, so that's a very cheap to make aggro deck.